This metal detector is dangerous, and I'm going to tell you why at the end of the video. So my tests are complete. I did more than I was supposed to do because guess what? I really enjoyed using it. I'm just going to address the most asked question whilst I was doing this particular series of videos. Let's address that right now. Is it as good as a Simplex? My job is to review metal detectors, test them out thoroughly and entertain your faces at the same time. Therefore, I have to stay objective when I am testing machines. Now, I have used the Simplex on a number of occasions, not for any great deal of time, I must add. So therefore, it wouldn't be fair for me to judge the Simplex in an objective, mature way. You get a lot of people in an immature way saying that their machine is obviously the best one because they own it. And the immaturity harks back to the Spectrum versus Commodore 64 days, those massive arguments. The winner of that was Spectrum, by the way. Commodore 64 obviously had better colour palette, but the Spectrum had a much better software base. Both offer similar features, so I can't really tell you if this is better than a Simplex. However, there's 3 people I know that have used both machines in some depth. 2 of those are professionals who I take their word as gospel in the metal detecting field, and all 3 of those say that they prefer the Q30 over the Simplex, so take of that what you will. Now I'm going to go into the negative points about this metal detector in the beginning, but before we do that, let's repeat the positive points. Firstly, it's ridiculously cheap, and at the moment at the Joan Allen website, at the moment, this is a temporary offer, you get a free pointer with it as well, which is worth, I don't know, it's ridiculously cheap. So the brilliant Raptor coil and the parts there have stood the test of time. It's very, very tough. The telescopic, I just love this so much, and I love the telescopic armrest even more. That is a fantastic feature. I found myself in a situation where I was detecting banks, and I was like, with a typical detector where you've got a locked in stem and it's out there, you're like this. With this, it comes right down, you can get in there, and also you can do trees as well. People do hide treasure in trees, by the way, stuff like that. Of course, it's waterproof, it's tough, the battery life is ridiculous. I don't know how many times I had to charge it, it wasn't many at all. It's comfortable, well balanced, light. The depth on this is good, really, really good. And this is something which is very, very important. The depth is relative in the way of, how am I going to explain this? So I don't like doing depth tests, and I'll tell you why, because I don't think they're a good reflection of a functional depth. I'm going to make that word up. That's saying up. Functional depth. What is functional depth? We can take a coin, we can stick it in the ground flat like that. We can metal detect it and go, oh, that depth's 14, 15 inches. That has to transpose in a functional way when you're on a wet field with different conditions. The coin's at a different angle, everything's different, and the most important thing, motion is involved. That being that we are moving. Now, I can go take some really good metal detectors and I can go, look at that, 15, 16 inches from a depth test, right? But it means nothing if I'm moving quickly, well, not quickly, if I'm moving along, it's raining, it's windy, the coin is at a different angle, etc. This machine's functional depth is brilliant. That being, I find items at the same depth as the depth test that I did at the beginning in the unboxing. You can watch that video right there. So I'm actually finding items at that depth. Other machines, you can expect to find things at a specific depth, but you find that you won't. It's mostly in 4 or 5 inches on top. So functional depth, phenomenal. We've got to remember that this is a beginner's metal detector. Ground balance, manual ground balance, again waterproof, lots and lots of options. Field, park, 2 beach options, gold, reject, cancel, choose tones. I think it's up to 4 tones or something like that. Obviously sensitivity and target ID a target ID numbers and a target ID arc as well in a beginner's metal detector. As far as I'm concerned, the proof is deeply within the pudding. If you've been watching my series on this machine and any of my other series and other machines, there's X5 and X10 right there as well, which are also great machines. You'll see that I've made some really good finds, and you'll see the depth that I've been finding them on different conditions, in different environments, beach environments, land environments. You know, I've pushed this one. As a reviewer, I have to be critical, but in this instance I'm going to have to be hypercritical because I can't really find that much wrong with it. But there are a couple of things that I think could be changed. Number one is, when we're changing through our modes, we have to push this button and then the up down buttons. Okay, not a biggie, it's not massive at all, but just once I was like, I had my spade, I was like, oh come on man, it's not a big one really, I don't know what I'm doing. Secondly, we've lost that backlight button that we had in the X5 and the X10. It's been taken over by the magnetic charging port, which is awesome, by the way. I liked that light because look at the environment that I'm in. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and it feels like it's just about to get dark. Unfortunately, I live in England and it does get dark quite quickly in the winter. And as we encroach on midwinter, it's going to be dark around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I've got like 5 hours of metal detecting I still want to do. That button, that little light, come in really handy in the winter. I want that back, please, Quest. Okay, and this is the biggie. This is the big hypercritical thing, and I've got to try and word it right. Right, this, let's not beat around the bush. It looks like an Equinox, doesn't it? The little icon things, they look like an Equinox. The charging port looks like an Equinox. Same shape, arc, things like that. Now, I guess that the psychological idea of that is it's pushed towards a beginner audience, a beginner consumer. So therefore, a beginner goes, oh, it looks like an Equinox, therefore I'll give that a go, because it looks a little bit like an Equinox and it's much cheaper. You know how these things work, how marketing and branding works. And I think that that's a loss, because this is ridiculously potent on its own merit. You don't have to make it look like an Equinox. It's brilliant, right? I get why Quest did that, but it's so good in its own, you know, manifestation of brilliantness. I get why they did it, but the thing is that it's targeted at a beginner audience. This is not a beginner's machine. This is a mid-range machine, right? I love this machine. I will use this machine all the time. I've got to try and use the X10 at the same time. But anyway, I love this machine. I think it's brilliant. To me, it's easily a mid-range machine. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot ever so slightly there, because, as I said, it's awesome on its own merit, even without kind of like, you know, purposefully looking like a Equinox, I think. So for me, it's a perfect beginner's machine. It ticks all of the boxes, and that's why it's so dangerous. And it's not dangerous to you and me as consumers. It's very good for you and me as consumers. It's dangerous for metal detecting brands, because what's going to happen is for that price, other brands are going to have to replicate similar, and what it's going to do is it must just push down prices on the whole. I think we're beginning to get really good quality products for really cheap prices, which is dangerous for a lot of companies, and I do feel for them, but they're going to have to push their prices down to keep up with things like this. So there you go, the Q30. Just thoroughly enjoyed using it. It's a thoroughly potent machine, and for the price, which is ridiculous, you just can't go wrong. You really can't. So thank you for watching. The next review series will be on the Q60, and we've got a big jump in price there, by the way. We've come from this, which is $299 at the moment with the free pointer, link in the description below, and we're moving up to the Q60, which is $699, I want to say, I don't know, multi-frequency. So that's going to be interesting. Not multi-frequency in the sense of multi-frequency at the same time, but multi-frequency in the sense of you can choose specific frequencies. Anyway, it's got nothing to do with this. Brilliant, excellent, 10 out of 10. Onwards.